Good evening, all. I'm calling this meeting to order. Leona, could we start with a roll call?
Alex Colazzo,
Present.
Brucey Cummins, Caleb Gunter,
Here.
Carrie Villeneuve, Charlie Lykoff, Darren Heitner, Deborah Rosenbaum,
Present.
Gail Butler, Greg Martin, Joanne Smith, Mariana Seiler, Mary Pelican,
Here.
Steffi Pascal, Tangerine Moore. At this time, you do not have a quorum. You're short by one.
Yeah, some people come a little late, so I wouldn't, two of them, maybe they'll. Brucey's not coming
No,
tonight.
she wasn't coming.
No, but let me just see if Gail's coming.
Nobody's online?
I only know about Tangerine not being able to be here.
It's not
Oh.
hybrid.
That's done? All right, interesting.
Well, we can talk amongst ourselves for a moment. We've never been good at that. I don't think we can even improve minutes.
You need a quorum to do that.
Pledge of Allegiance. And,
You can do the pledge.
all right. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Leona, besides
Someone walking
Brucey,
in?
did anyone else indicate to you that they weren't?
There we go. We will have a quorum. 3 seconds.
There we go. Okay.
Don't be sorry. Be welcome.
We've never done it in here before. Nice to see everybody.
We can add to the record that Mr. Martin is present. Do we now have a quorum?
Correct.
I move that we approve the minutes. Actually, I need a motion, don't
I think you have to. Yeah.
I? Has everyone received the minutes? Are there any discussions, any changes that need to be made to the minutes?
I've read the minutes. I didn't see anything that needed to be changed.
I have a motion. Do I have a
I'll
second?
Who made the second?
All those in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None heard. We'll call it approved. Thank you. Welcome all this evening. I'm glad to be back in person a little bit. It's nice to see all the kind faces. Our first department update, our first item agenda is department update. Carl?
All right. Good evening. As our chair mentioned, it is a welcome sight seeing everyone in person as opposed to virtually, and then, of course, hybrid, how we've been the last couple meetings. I do have a few things I would like to share with you all. Some good things, really good things. This time, in about a week or so, our playbook edition will be mailed out to your homes. So that's our first edition in over a year. So that's hopefully a sign that things are going to turn around and stay around. As you know, we're in the holiday season, and I hope everyone had a good Thanksgiving holiday. As you know, we've had a few light up series. We still have a couple more. This Friday, we have Light Up Sistrunk. And the following week, we have Light Up Carter. Light Up Carter is that Saturday from 3 to 7. Also, as one of our larger events that we have, that we produce as a department, we have our New Year's Eve Downtown Countdown on the 31st. So we'll go ahead and garner in the new year. And last but not least, as many of you all may know, we have been updating our lights at a lot of our fields. Mills Pond has completed theirs, and we are in the process of completing portions of Holiday. Once we're done with all of the LED upgrades at Holiday, we'll move on to Oswald Park. And that is my department update.
Thank you, Carl. Any questions for Carl? Go ahead, Kerry.
Carl, are you guys, are you, I would ask you a quick. How about now? There it is. Did you prepare this? I wanted to ask you a question about this, and if you prepared it, then this would be the time to ask. If we're gonna go over it, then I'll wait till that.
Requested it, actually.
So that is the tracker for the expenses that what Carrie is referring to is this here bond tracker document here. When we initially started the whole bond process, one of the requests was to track what those expenses were, and that's what this is. I know our AECOM team is now kind of facilitating this now, but this is something that I wanted to make sure that we had today due to some of the things that we're discussing tonight.
So I guess I just wanted to know, if I have a question about it, should I ask you or should I ask AECOM then?
I guess that would depend on the question, but yeah.
So my question is I just want to know if we can just add a column that just shows what the original budget, what was originally budgeted for that particular item, because I think it's important. Well, first off, I'm so glad that this was done. This is something we've talked about, but this is the first meeting I've been at where we actually have it, and I think it's great. But I think that, as we allocate additional money over and above what was originally budgeted for items, we need to visually see that. So like, for example, you look on here, you've got Tunnel Top at 10 million. Like, okay, that's great. And I remember us doing that. But I think it's important that we see that Tunnel Top was originally budgeted for 5 million. And that we have a column that shows like, okay, you're over 5 million here. Is the Aquatic Center on here?
Yes.
Okay, so however much we went over on Aquatic Center, so that we can kind of see like, okay, we're making the conscious decision to spend more in certain areas, but we need to, in my opinion, we need a column showing that so that you don't end up in a situation where it's like whatever the last park we get to, or the last handful of parks we get to, is like suddenly like, oh, there's not a dime left. So that whenever someone comes in and says, hey, we want to spend more on this park than was originally planned, we're looking at the thing and saying like, okay, we're already X number amount over. Realistically, if we spend more on this next place, where's it going to come from? Just so I think having an extra column, which probably requires converting to landscape instead of portrait, that shows that the difference between what was originally budgeted and how much we're actually spending would be really helpful.
No, you're absolutely right, and I want to say that was actually mentioned at one of our previous meetings, and I'll work with AECOM to see about that as well.
Thank you so much.
Great point, Kerry. That was actually one of my future questions, was how much had come out of the future projects of 14 million that kind of was unallocated in the original bond scope. But any other questions for Carl? None being heard, we can move to Parks Bond update with Mr. Webb from AECOM.
Yes, thank you, Caleb. Again, my name is Joe Webb. I'm with the company AECOM, assisting the city's bond program.
Is there a microphone?
Oop, uh-oh. Is that on? Is that better? I just need to put it near my mouth. Happy to be here tonight. Again, happy to see everyone. It's not looking at everybody through a little box here. I'm shorter than you would have imagined. So very happy to be here talking about our Phase 2 park program. Try and go through this. Fonts are a little different on this screen than were original, but I think our information is all here. Just want to give, for those that may have not seen the previous presentation, a quick overview of the bond program and how we're approaching it. Quick update, very quick on the Phase 1 projects, which are currently in design. And then we'll talk about the Phase 2 recommendations, and then, of course, our next steps. But I wanted to start, I think, Carrie, that was a very good point, and we are working on creating a better layout for how to keep track of everything. We really want the transparency so that 2 years from now, what happened to the money that's never the question. We're purely operating. This is what was allocated and this is what we try to do, but we understand we make conscious decisions along the way to make changes, right? So kind of as where are we, continuing to advance the program. We have previously discussed with you and reviewed and approved through the City Commission the Phase 1 projects. What we're really trying to do is get this entire bond program moving, on many different levels so that, as much can get done. And if there is no discussion, there is concurrence from the neighborhoods and residents, those projects can advance while we continue to work on resolving any differences of opinion on another. So here we are with Phase 1 projects currently in design, our Phase 2 projects coming up. There will be Phases 3 and 4 and perhaps maybe someday 5. But quick overview here, the public engagement recap, 90 total parks. We really got great concurrence on like 55 of them. 13 that really had minor corrections. Our first 34 that really everyone agreed, said great, this would be great if you built it and let's go ahead. So we are. There's potentially 9 new parks, but those will actually be a little later in the program. And then there's 13 where really we feel we need to follow up on, but we can do that concurrently while other parts of our team are working on design, if that makes sense. So we're really balancing the need to, engage the public. We understand that here we need to make sure that neighborhoods and associations and people that are interested have full voice in everything that we're doing, but then also balancing that against, the desire to really move ahead and get things done. There's a lot of eagerness in the community of, that's great, when is it going to be done, is what we keep hearing. So as much as possible, kind of balancing that, keep listening where it's important to do so, but move ahead where if everybody's in agreement, let's do them. So we've kind of developed, the graphic on the right is just showing, really kind of a very large team of people so that we can work at multiple different levels across the program. So quick update on Phase 1 projects. Originally 39 park improvement projects, some of them very small, some of them we really chose kind of the less intensive design ones with the idea of getting them off the ground and getting our team acclimated, getting the programs rolling. We had actually a discussion again today and many more of, just the pure mechanics of pushing that many projects through permitting into construction, bundling them, it's just a logistical thing to try and do. But really focus on the 34 right now. And I think the message we also hear or have been hearing is that really focusing more on true improvements rather than, paint and patch. The intent of the bond program was really to make a difference, not just, compensate for maintenance or other capital programs, but really trying to make changes. So Phase 1, this is the whole group of projects. You can see we've kind of, in our world, we've broken them into teams that can be landscape architect driven, engineering driven, and then kind of a whole bunch that are quite small that we're kind of calling our quick wins or low hanging fruit that might be just you know, adding a drinking fountain, some smaller things that we're going to try and bundle together and do kind of in an efficient fashion to maximize the money we have. You know, there's no reason to spend $10,000 in design to put in a $20,000 drinking fountain. So,
Is that what it?
well, if there's sewer and water, that probably wasn't a good analogy. But half the money on design, we really want to make sure that we're, yeah, you could pass out bottles of water if I have to run sewer and water for 2 blocks, but probably not a good analogy. But current tasks, the 9 projects are in design. We actually kicked off some of the more intensive with some of the permitting people and others today, working towards some like Bass and Mills Pond where, you know, there's going to be some great improvements and it's going to take a little time, but we're moving our team as quickly as possible. And we continue to work on the concept refinement for the signature projects, you know, particularly Carter Park now we've been authorized to move ahead with. That seems like there's a pretty consistent desire there that can be identified. So we'll be moving that one, I think as of 2 days ago, that task order was issued to us. So really moving ahead with Carter, continuing to work with Phil and the Neighborhood Association to refine the plans for Holiday Park. And we're a little, you know, pending determination on Lockhart Park. So continuing to try and resolve and keep those bigger projects moving forward, which I think will be, you know, much more impactful and much more visual than some of the smaller. But our phase 2 recommendations, again, these are again another group that we felt we had good public consensus. You know, we reached out to the public again since the 2016 master plan, which had a lot of public involvement that kind of informed the original design or the original cost estimates. We did another round of public involvement, got a lot of input again. And with these, again, we had pretty good consensus. These are a little more design intensive. They're going to take a little more time to, you know, architects, engineers, others working on, but, you know, we're ready for those to come into kind of the fold of our flow of work. So 16 projects, you know, not as evenly distributed across the city. We're really focused on the areas of need and where things are in need of massive repair. But those, and then continuing really to try and work across the entire city to as much as possible so that we really start to show the program advancing, you know, everywhere. So again, the same kind of team approach where we've broken them into groups based on kind of the preeminence of the work. It could be landscape architecture. Some of them are very much architecture. So we've developed different teams. We're fortunate to be able to have a very large group that can work on them simultaneously. So hoping to advance all of these programs by a team kind of approach. Again, on the website, I believe you were all given a link. There's the Parks 2 conceptual plans are all on there. This was what we take as the intent or design intent. They're very schematic, but it is at least the intention that we got from the public on what needs to be done at each park. These are available on the website under the phase 2 concept sketches, I think it's called. They're online. You know, these are ones that we heard. Basically, this is what we want to try and do. There is a part where we do take these now and we do a pre-cost validation to make sure that our costs, which were originally assigned in 2016, you know, what is appropriate for today. But then we use the public's, we did a prioritization as a part of the public input and use that as a guide on if there are any corrections that need to be made or if there are some things that really are out of line cost-wise from what was originally estimated. So our next steps, I mean, with your concurrence or with your agreement, we'd like to move these projects into the next phase of work. You know, start to take them into conceptual design, doing cost estimates, doing engineering evaluations and actually moving them forward into what we would call 30% design drawings, then to 60, 90 bidding, and hopefully construction on a pretty aggressive timeline. So that's our plan in brief, and certainly thank you for your time. Again, very happy to be seeing live people in a real world again. But I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, or if there's any comments that you'd like to make.
So, with respect to the phase one projects, if you look at the original budget, 2016 budget, what is the cost of phase one?
Oh, boy. We're back to phase one. I think it's somewhere around 39 million.
Okay.
I'm off the top of my head, and people can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a pretty good bite of projects off the start. But there's lots of simple projects. So that's where it gets a little messier. It's, again, logistics.
So I guess, kind of with Carrie's comment for the chart, would it be possible also to add at the bottom, like phase one, the parks that are in phase one, phase two, the parks that are in phase two, and that what was originally budgeted for those, so that we can kind of see what are we missing as we go as well? Is that
Yes.
possible?
Yeah, and lots of active discussions towards that very end. I mean, just for us internally and our desire to be transparent, everybody wants to be transparent. And I think these are the ideas we're very much hoping to, instead of creating 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper, actually create a dashboard that's live and active and tied to a database. Because as I get on to project 57 and 73, it's going to be a lot harder to keep track if it's not a automated database. So that is the active thing we're working on actually this week, of creating that database, but kind of tracking. We are trying really hard to, what was said was the amount of money is the amount of money we have. We know that some had to be done on certain projects, and we know some went to the aquatics facility, but to as much as we can, we're trying to stay true to that mantra.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I've just been trying to like cross-check it across, and so I think it'll be.
You and me both.
Thank you.
I have a question, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Mr. Webb, is there any way you could rewind the slide just to the end? I want to just review the bid phase. I don't know if it's possible. Yeah, so is it, okay, so we have different design teams, and these bids are obviously not labeled like which park is which. So my question is, of these parks that are on here, none of them went out to bid that are in that phase two yet? Is that correct?
Oh, no, none, no. I mean,
Okay.
we're really only been fully approved to take them into design as of 2 weeks ago. So they still do have to be designed. We still are trying to bundle them. We're looking at all kinds of delivery methods, whether that's traditional design bid build or design build or CMAR, trying to be as efficient as possible with the city's money to get the most bang for the buck. So, but they haven't hit, even being bid yet.
So the bid package, I'm just curious to know how that breaks down. If, we have X amount allocated for this project and Y amount allocated for that project, but we don't really know how much it's going to cost because the cost of materials is going up, the cost of labor is going up, and things like that. So I guess my question is, number one, for phase two projects, I believe there was somewhere on the slide here that had the phase two projects, the parks listed for phase two.
Mm-hmm.
Is that here on the anywhere on the?
Yeah, you can see these are all of the phase two. They're in different,
Okay.
I don't know how to point on here,
The teams there.
but, broken up by the teams, but here's the group of them.
Page 5.
Yeah, I don't know. You're looking
Okay.
at some, I have it on.
Yeah,
the
I'm looking
screen.
at it on the screen and on paper here. Okay, so phase two was the 16 projects that you stated were kind of the ones that needed the most attention immediately, correct?
Well, we're in phase one. So we really looked at all the ones, not so much, yes, in need of initial attention, but also we had strong public consensus
Okay.
where we felt confident that we were meeting what people told us was what they wanted.
Yeah,
We don't want to be moving ahead. If there's a need to re-meet and revisit certain aspects, we're taking the time to do that. But for multiple of these, the phase 1 and phase 2 particularly, we had consensus. And so these are a little more intensive in that they're like bigger projects that are going to need more disciplines and more people,
Sure.
different skilled people to develop the plans. So we did the phase 1, which are a little less intensive, and these more intensive, but both equally important, both full consensus.
Because the reason I'm asking is because towards the end of the presentation, it sounded like you had, with the bid phase, that you were trying to move a little expeditiously towards some of these projects that were listed here. And I guess ultimately my question is, how long is that process? From that bid phase on the last slide of that reel there, to get to, actually breaking ground. I thought we were a little further along than still trying to get bids from contractors.
Oh, yeah, and, I don't want to mislead anybody. It takes time. We have to meet public bidding laws, and
You have to put it out for everybody to get
I have to first
Full
go
opportunity.
through permitting, and whereas, like you say, your drinking fountain, that I have a sewer connection, I have a water connection.
Yeah.
I have to get permits for that. If these are on the water, some things take a while, and then really the public bidding process is going to determine a lot of the speed of it.
Is that like a 6-month process, a 1-year process?
It can be 6 months by the time it's let to the public, bids are received, a committee is formed, the, best, and then it's actually approved by the board.
Yeah, obviously.
Skipping those steps.
Final decisions need to be made before any of those even happen.
Then it has to be awarded, then the person has to mobilize to the site, and then they start work. So that's why we actually are hoping with a bunch of them that are smaller, that if we can pre-qualify several contractors and actually identify the work and somewhat condense that for when it's smaller, easier, simpler projects, we don't have to run through that whole program for every single one. We can follow public bidding by putting out solicitations for pre-qualified contractors and then simply go between them. So that's the kind of creative ways we're trying to do it. We have looked at CMAR, which we call, construction manager at risk. That was one consideration for like Lockhart Park. It might be for others where, we're going to try, still staying within public bidding laws, but try and expedite that process by bringing contractors along in the process. There's no question that, the public bidding process is a very formal process and it has to be followed. There is also a lot going on in South Florida. We're very conscious of the escalating prices and, everything from materials, and it's almost crystal ball where our people are usually 1 or 2% on point when it goes to bid. And once you get past 1 year out or 2 year out, these are people that cost estimate for 20 years are saying, I don't know. Depends what happens in China. Is COVID going to go away? So we're doing our very best to move them as quickly as possible, but we can't avoid, you're a public entity, we got to follow the rules.
Has there been any direction in the way of prioritizing, like, it seemed like the ones on some of these lists were in need of immediate attention, and I'm wondering if those went out to bid, and obviously we're in phase 1, had a good way through phase 1 here, and those were processed, and now that we're moving into phase 2, I'm just curious to know, if there was a way that they were prioritized, that the contractors are bidding in a certain order or something like that.
Well, and I think there's even pre-AECOM, Phil and his staff and Enrique really identified some places where the playground was just dangerous.
No, that's I think
some of those got pulled out and done, even before we were fully contracted.
Okay.
So there was some, what would I say, remediation. I don't want to say emergency, but desperate need kinds of projects. Even the lighting ones are being done. the city was struggling to even replace parts. They were cannibalizing one to replace parts in another, and now going all to LED. So those almost got preempted and done through a piggyback process. So I think working in partnership with the city and their staff, we have tried to address many of the things, even that way, a piggyback contract and a state contract, that's fully valid way to do it if the work is like light replacement. So, we tried to seize every different way to try and get those really critical projects addressed.
Okay. Thank you.
Good questions.
Joe, you hit on something I wanted to ask about also when we're talking about variances on costing of your expenditure sheets and stuff. One of the things I don't see on this is the lighting upgrades that the city decided to package and go out and do themselves. I know that like the playground at Bayview Park's been done in the last 2 years. Various upgrades that have already been done by the city that were on the original bond plan that have been completed. Is there a way to track what has been expended out of the bond or what's been reduced potentially out of the cost to the bond?
You're right.
Some of these that we can have a better inclination of where we really stand also on that, because
Ye-
continue to face escalations in price. We're going to continue to be asked for a lot of additional resources, I'm sure, going forward at times.
Yeah, Caleb.
Clearinghouse, we're going to need to know where we really are.
Right, and honestly, we are keeping track of that, and Leona asked for the update today. And, currently what we're honestly doing is, it's on paper, I have a little chart and all this stuff that we've been keeping track of, but we're really working to transfer that into a database that's a dashboard, because we're seeing that whereas it's messy today, it's going to get really messy 2 years from now. So trying to kind of make the conversion from sheets of paper to, an active, some of it would be on the website, some would be available through desktop applications. But as all these different things in there, we know them. Yep. Enrique has a very neat list of where the lighting projects are and which playgrounds. So it's together, but it's just.
But it's not even on this list. And so how do we know what's going on when we can't even get accurate information on the list we get?
I think that's got to be something we're working diligently to make sure we can answer those questions, Caleb.
Joe, do we have an idea of how much money has been spent on what Carrie's talking about? Any idea?
I hate pulling numbers off the top of my head, but I think it's.
Why don't you get that information to us when you actually have a hard number?
Yeah, we have a tracking of it, but some of it's land acquisition, some of it's the others, so we can give a breakdown of what that more looks like to you.
Yeah, because I'm not even sure that all of that money for lighting, Caleb, came out of this. I think that the city paid for some of it, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe Carl, you can answer that question.
It came through the bond. It did.
Oh, it did come from the bond. Okay, thank you.
So we deleted that from each of the amounts, pulled that out as set aside, and then, just considered part of the project done.
So this number here on the chart doesn't really reflect that what we spent on the lighting?
Not yet, and I don't even know if it's fully spent yet. I mean,
Yeah, we're just starting to make it, like Carl mentioned, we just finished mill, so we're just starting to make those payments now. Holiday, we've done a partial payment, so we haven't actually spent that, but that's not being run through AECom, so that's something we'll work with Joe so that when you guys see it, it'll be all on one. All the information will be on there, whether or not they're working on it.
yeah.
That'll
I'm a
be
planner
helpful.
and designer,
That'll be really
but
helpful.
being painfully explained that there's a difference between budgeted and allocated and spent and expended. So I'm learning the terminologies myself, so.
Good, but also as a clearinghouse board, we're trying to make educated decisions, and there's nothing like making an uneducated, educated decision and looking
Yeah.
back asking why.
Yeah, I don't anticipate prices going down,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
we're trying to be smart.
Joe, that's what I want to bring up and touch on a little. Look, at the end of the day, prices are going to go up. We're going to find ourselves 20% short on everything because 20% construction costs, and we're going to be making decisions on individual parks.
I love your idea about what I'll call the task team or a SWAT team to go out and take care of some small projects. Have you looked at any of these other bigger projects to try to take care of that so that we don't find ourselves a year and a half down the road with a 20% increase in cost to try to accomplish what needs to be done? Is there any realignment with this? I'll call it the SWAT team. I think that's a great idea. I would love you to be more aggressive with that, because our communities are going to come to us and say, our $200 million didn't go as far as we thought, and the allocation to a specific park didn't go as far as we thought, because we spent 18 months figuring out what to do. And well, we wanted a drinking fountain. Just go get the drinking fountain in. But can we help you with that? Can we empower you to accelerate that time frame to avoid these increasing costs?
Yeah, well, and I always like to be empowered, but I mean, we're trying as hard as we can with all of the smaller ones. I would say some of the things is making sure the neighborhood agrees with what the decision is. And that takes the time, as we know. Like, there's one meeting going on as we're having this
Sure.
meeting. And, you know, I can't jump into design when I am not sure what we're designing. That can be really make us go backwards. So as soon as we get, you know, one of the ways with the bigger projects is this idea of CMAR, where it's construction manager at risk. We do projects like that for some of our public and other private entities where, you know, you actually bring the contractor on through the process. I wouldn't do it on all of these other small projects, but if it was a Lockhart or potentially others, that does speed up the process. We understand. Honestly, I don't know. I'm just speaking for our cost estimators. Right now, there is such a spike in prices. There is a potential of it coming down a little. You know, lumber and steel are becoming more available, so some of those commodities are coming down. In the meantime, labor is going up. It is a real science right now of trying to figure out down the line. We've just experienced this drastic jump, and that's a lot of supply line and things with lumber and other things that we're hoping level out and aren't quite so dramatic year on year. I mean, if this keeps going at this rate over 5 years, you know, but the hope is that that's not true. So we're trying to expedite them, but I can't move ahead until I get concurrence.
Well, I guess what I'd like to say is if this group can help you move things forward or evaluate the needs to try to avoid, to accelerate that time frame, I'm happy to try to do that, because the longer we spend talking about how many, dare I say, pickleball courts is going to go somewhere, the more expensive it's going to become. And there are some parks that just need some, you already got it. Let's go do it. And so I just want to empower you to say, if we can help you, let us know how we can help you accelerate.
So on that note, maybe we can, and this might be a question for Carl, have a communication to the city commission that we can have, like you said, a task force that has under a certain budget. I don't know, Carl, is that something that would be in the purview of city staff, or do you have to have a contractor bid to get some of these smaller projects out? I mean, what would be the best way to address that for the stuff, say, under $500,000?
So I think a part of that is kind of what Joe and his team are trying to work through now, is getting those smaller projects, which we would consider like quick wins, through. And so that's kind of the idea behind phase one, and then moving into phase two is to get some of the less intense design projects off the ground.
Yeah.
Well, my suggestion would probably qualify a contractor if the city can't do it, and just get those guys to do like everything that's like the smaller budget stuff, and just kind of have like one contract. Is that something that's possible?
So that's something we can look at, but keep in mind too that we still have to follow all of our procurement guidelines here as a city. So from a speed standpoint, that's all going to be predicated on Joe and his group coming before you, our team, you know, working with him, which we have been doing, and finalizing a lot of these things so we can move forward. But, you know, the process is going to take some time, and so the faster we can get through some of these smaller projects, I think will help with some of the angst, if you will, to get these projects moving.
I think that's kind of the crux of the matter here is that time is money. And I think that it's gonna be a problem for us down the road if I'm hoping that we can maybe do a communication to the commission, or maybe Mr. Webb can put together a list of things that might qualify for like the high priority but low costing stuff that we can somehow get authorized and the bids out right away, because the bidding process takes forever. I mean, that's where we're going to be losing the most money.
Yeah, and I do think your intent is already our direction, in that if you look on the slide here, the Team 4, I'm taking a whole bundle of these and going to try and just do them directly through 3 different contractors, but we're working with the city's procurement staff to, as much as possible, find expeditious ways to do that. But
Good evening, Phil Thornburg. So let me chime in as well. So I've been kind of taking the lead for the department and working with Joe and AECom on the bond. So to address a few questions that have come up. So when we talk about the budget and the amount spent, I just want to make sure the board understands that we're not going to know the real amount on what was spent in each park until the project is bid, constructed, and the project management is done. So Joe and his group are cost estimating at this point on what we think we can do and what we think the prices are going to be. But we won't know exactly how much we spent on a park until 2 or 3 years from now when we cut the ribbon, then we're going to know. So we're going to be able to put on the website and on the dashboard what initially was done, what money has been spent up to this time, and at this point it's more consulting and then the engineering, the permitting, things like that, the small stuff, not a lot of money. But then you start digging the holes and start putting stuff in the ground, then that's when your costs are going to go up and you're going to see a big rise in your expenditures. So that's there. The other thing I think we need to think about is AECom is a huge company, and what Joe has been able to pull off here is probably better than most, because as he mentioned, he's got a lot of teams working on a lot of stuff at one time, and that was one of the things that we liked about bringing AECom on compared to some of the other ones that were interested in this project, was that we were concerned it would be 8, 10, 15 years until 1 or 2 designers and engineers would get all these projects done. So he's got, I can tell you, I'm on the calls with him every other week, and he's got a lot of people working on all this at one time. So he's got phase 1 already moving, and he's already got phase 2, and that's why we're here tonight. We're trying to not push phase through 2, but that's part of the process. So now we come to the board. If you guys are okay with the phase 2s, then that needs to go to the city commission as a public hearing. So we got all that to go. And then on to Alex's point, then you got procurement, and procurement's on the line as well. They're working with us, and they understand that we need to get these things done as quickly as possible. And they're looking at all different options. And as Joe mentioned, we're looking at the bigger ones doing the CMAR. Some of the smaller stuff would be a single contractor that we can just give the work to. We did the lights with an existing contract we already had. So we understand we're trying to get this done as soon as possible as well. And I personally want to see it get done, at least something done before I'm out the door. So
Is there anything we could do to help? I mean, can we make a communication to the commission?
I don't think so. I mean,
I don't want to redirect Joe if he's on point getting this stuff done.
I think the process is the process, and it's slow, but I can tell you it's faster than most city projects that I've seen, because I think, again, he has a large team working on a lot of stuff at one time, and I think that they're getting a lot of stuff completed and moving, and it's just a matter of going through the process. But we're on it, and we're doing all we can, and I don't know that there's anything that can change. It's, as Carl mentioned, we have procurement codes we have to go through. There's different thresholds on what has to be bid, what can't be bid, what has to go, how long it has to be out. All that stuff is listed out and we have to follow that. So, but I can assure you we're moving as fast as we can.
One more question for you, since we got you at the podium here. Curious to know, I mean, is the city staff and employees doing any of this work, or is it all going out to bid?
It's all going out to bid.
Okay. Thanks, Phil.
Is there, are you guys in communication with the building department to let them specifically know what's coming down the pipe and timing in terms of getting the inspections and making sure that they have the personnel to be able to handle these inspections and say, you know, hey, this is coming. Do you guys have the personnel? Can you have like a dedicated personnel, something like that?
Yes, we have. We actually had that conversation again today to make sure that they know what's coming, and, you know, I have a few favors left in the bucket, so, you know, if we need to use it, we will. But they've always been very good about when we make a call that they expedite the stuff for us.
Do you guys need a motion from us to approve what
So-
you're requesting?
So we do. We do need a
Okay.
phase two, and again, as the process goes through with the bond covenants is, it goes through this board, and then it would go to the commission as a public hearing. We're hoping to have that set the first meeting in January. And then if that passes at the commission level, then Joe will be tasked to start phase two with their design.
So you need a motion to authorize you. Okay. I make a motion that we authorize AECom to move forward with phase two.
I second it.
Guys, I just want to make one point out here is that on the phase two projects here, they're not specifically labeled. Am I mistaken with that, Joe?
No, they're there. They're there. They're all listed.
Page 5, slide 14.
Alex, it's.
Slide 15,
It's slide 14.
It's on page 5.
page 5. That's where I was.
It's actually on your screen. If you look at your screen,
Okay.
those are the projects.
Oh, okay. It says team. All right. So this is all phase two right here.
Yep. 2 groups of 3 and 2 groups of 5 for 16 projects.
All right. Well,
I second it.
Okay, Caleb, I'm going to go through the roll call individually so we could get it on the record.
That's fine.
Alex Colazzo,
yes.
Brucey Cummins, Caleb Gunter,
Yes.
Carrie Villeneuve,
Yes.
Charlie Lykoff, Darren Heitner, Deborah Rosenbaum,
Yes.
Gail Butler, Greg Martin,
Yes.
Joanne Smith, Mariana Seiler, Mary Pelican,
Yes.
Steffi Pascal, Tangerine Moore. You do have a quorum, so motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. I look forward to seeing you again in the future, but if I do not in advance, have a wonderful holiday season.
You too, Kate.
Thanks,
Still.
Joe. Next item on our agenda is the joint use parks. Zoe Saunders.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Zoe Saunders. I'm the Chief Education Officer for the City of Fort Lauderdale. Happy to be here with you again this evening. Let me just find our presentation. Is it? And thank you, Leona. I serve as the liaison to the Education Advisory Board, so I appreciate you helping to get everything organized. I'm just making sure I get the right thing up.
So some of the board may or may not have been here, but I want to kind of give an introduction to Zoe's presentation tonight. So as you know, there was some discussion at the last, I think it was the last board meeting about this what we call the school park properties and the dollars allocated to the school park and how those, the committee that was put together and re-looked at the allocation of the bond dollars to the school park properties. So I'll leave it at that just for Zoe, but I didn't want her to come in cold and start presenting without a little bit of background. So we wanted to educate the Parks Board as well. I know the Education Advisory Board has been kind of brought up to speed on this. So we wanted to bring the Parks Board up to speed on it as well, because it's kind of a cooperative effort that the two boards are putting together to try to look at enhancing the school properties for the public benefit when the school's not in session. So with that, I'll go with Zoe. Thank you, Zoe.
Thank you. So I'm very pleased to be here. It's really been a wonderful project to be part of. I've worked very closely with Enrique and Phil and also our partners at the School Board of Broward County to put together a proposal. So I'm here today just to provide you an update of where we are and to get your considerations as we move forward with advancing these projects and adding more parks online for our city. So back in 2018, as this board is very familiar with, the mayor signed on to the 10-minute walk campaign so that every city resident can walk to a very high-quality park within 10 minutes of their home. And part of the strategy is a partnership with the School Board of Broward County. As the largest landowner in Broward County, it makes a lot of sense for us as a city to partner with them, make improvements to the property, and then open that up to the community after hours. And we're seeing across the country that a lot of urban growing communities are looking at this as a very innovative strategy because we know that land is limited. And so this is a really great economical way to bring more parks online for our city and also to create a benefit for the students during the school day. So in 2019, as you know, once the park bond was approved, there was an initial allocation built in for making improvements to the school board property. At that time, our Education Advisory Board felt like it would be really appropriate to have a due diligence in reviewing the projects. As they are school board property, wanted to make sure that we had that opportunity to really have a focused planning in coordination with the school board, and also to look at every park, every possible park within our school system. So we launched a joint use working group that was comprised of city and school board staff. We've been planning for over 18 months. It involved many meetings with principals. We also did an asset inventory of all of the park amenities that are owned by the city of Fort Lauderdale. And we did the same thing for our parks opportunities within the schools. So right now, where we are is we've gone through and we've scored all of the school sites. We've identified those that are viable to make open to the community, and we're proposing certain reallocations to really maximize the benefit citywide. When we worked with the joint use, this initiative at the beginning, we really wanted to start with guiding principles to focus our work. The Education Advisory Board first established these guiding principles, and I joined your board as well to validate this approach, and it's really been our guiding light on this project. There are three primary principles as we approached this. One, we really wanted to focus on a citywide plan and look at this as a system of parks as opposed to a school-by-school approach. Also, we wanted to look at geographic equity, wanting to make sure that we were looking at how resources were distributed across the city to ensure that they were equitable for all residents in the city of Fort Lauderdale. And of course, holistically, the idea here is that we can build community for every neighborhood where there is a school nearby that is a viable joint use park. This is the criteria we use to score all of the potential school sites. We did develop this with input from the principals and the School Board of Broward County, along with our school board members, both staff and school board. The idea within this is to really score each site to identify how it will be a win-win project for both the community and the school. And it does account for changes that may have been needed since the master plan was developed back in 2016. So in summary, the working group is recommending 15 schools for Parks Bond funding. Our parameters were to stay within the initial budget allocation that was put forward in the Parks Bond list. However, we are recommending certain scope of work adjustments, and those adjustments are based on the scoring methodology and also through public input that we've had with neighborhoods and the school community. We've also been coordinating very closely with the School Board of Broward County on the overall approach. So the proposal does increase the number of joint use parks and makes enhancements to those that are existing. One of the things I'd like to highlight is actually what you get from the plan. So with this, we're looking at enhancements for 11 playgrounds, 5 basketball courts, 2 tennis courts / pickleball courts, 4 pool upgrades, 5 field upgrades, 5 walking paths / tracks, and enhancements to our 2 community centers that are on school board property. So these are the proposed new projects. As we looked at this initiative, we first started with a list of all of our schools, and we visited every school site to identify which was viable. We're proposing these projects. They were not initially contemplated within the master plan in 2016, but we felt as part of our review process that these were really great candidates for a park and definitely addressed a need in the community. You can see here that we're recommending projects across all districts that have schools that would be viable. District 1 is not included in this. There are 2 schools in District 1, both of which are already joint use parks. But we were able to find and identify other schools that would be great assets to the neighborhood. And when we looked at this, a couple of things, as I showed you the criteria, we wanted to understand a 10-minute walk, but we also looked at barriers for a young family to be able to access a park. So we looked at major thoroughfares that might prevent them from walking to the park. We also looked at the increased community demand based on conversations with community and with the school. We're proposing an increased project scope for these 4 schools that we really identified a large demand because they were situated within a park desert, or they offered really unique amenities that were not afforded by the city parks in the immediate vicinity. For these 4 schools that are existing joint use parks, we are recommending to maintain the scope of the project. In further review, it felt like the initial allocation didn't meet the needs, and we're able to, with those improvements, continue the high utilization. We did make some adjustments to Virginia Schumann Young Elementary School. Carrie, thank you for your input on that in the community in terms of reallocating funds based on what the priorities of that community are. We are proposing a decrease in project scope for 4 of the schools that were in the initial project list. For Croissant Park, that reduction is really due to the fact that there is not a need for a bathroom facility, which was initially put into the Parks Bond, because we have access right now to the school bathroom, so there's some efficiency built in there. For Sunrise Middle School, we are looking to reduce, we're proposing to reduce that scope as well. For a couple factors. One, the lower need, because we were able to bring in the Bennett Elementary School playground for that neighborhood, along with upgrades to the tennis courts for Sunrise Middle. Also, initially, what was looked at was a regulation-sized field with a track around that, which doesn't fit. But what we have been able to do is really think about the specific priorities the community has. We feel that we can really bring in a lot of high value in addressing those priorities at this project scope. And we're continuing to have conversations with the community. Walker Elementary School, we're recommending a reduction based on the reduced need for lighting. And William Dandy Middle School, it was mutually agreed upon with the school board and the principal that there wasn't as large of a need for that because we're making significant improvements at area city parks like Oswald Park and Bass Park. So that's a very high-level overview of a lot of months of planning and visiting with schools. We've been providing monthly updates also to our Education Advisory Board, and we've hosted public input meetings as well, virtually to provide input on the plan. So I also have for you in your packet more detailed overview. There's supplemental information that goes school by school and walks through the different projects we're proposing in the scope for each of those sites. So I'm sure there will be questions, so I'll open it to questions at this point. And I'd also like to share, I was remiss in not introducing the Education Advisory Board Chair, Dr. Alan Zeman is with us. Thank you for your continued enthusiasm for this project and support all along the way as we work through this proposal. Yes, Carrie.
Go ahead, Carrie.
Ladies first, go ahead.
Zoe,
Yes.
Sunrise Middle, there's a proposed budget of $1 million, but I thought that original budget was higher than that. And can you tell me what that number is and what happened to the money that Where did that where are you proposing to reallocate that money? And why do you feel that this school should be impacted, or this area should be impacted?
Absolutely. So as part of this project, if there's more money, there would be more improvements we could spend. So what we were looking at was really working within the budget that we had. And we relied on our process of scoring the need for each school, and also beginning to think more concretely about the amenities that could be built in. So it was a combination of both. And so as part of this overall project, we are proposing reallocation so that we can really spread the wealth across the city, but we're also really mindful of meeting the needs and the priorities of each specific community. So that certainly is important for us to look at. With Sunrise Middle School, the idea was to have a regulation-sized turf field similar to what was at Carter Park. As we looked at it, there are a couple things we considered with that particular project. One is that there was a Bennett Elementary School. We added the joint use park there. So now that community does have a park within walking distance. Also, we were able to bring in synthetic turf at both Mills Pond and Holiday Park that met a lot of the athletic league demands for the city. But we also realized that while you're close to Holiday Park in that community, there are a lot of barriers in terms of walking there, right?
Yes.
And so there's certainly, this is a beautiful property that has great potential to serve that community. And that's why we are continuing to recommend a very large investment of $1 million for that property. It is the largest investment we're proposing in a new project as part of this proposal.
Originally, what was it proposed? What was the proposed budget for this part, for this area?
$1,750,000.
That's what I thought it was. I could have.
Yep.
That's what I thought it was. I didn't
Yeah.
want to say the number, but that's what I thought.
Which slide?
Okay, so we swim normally at Carter Park, and I see that track field is used. I mean, people are there at 5 o'clock in the morning, 4:30 in the morning, and they are using it. It's active. It's being used largely by the neighborhood. And we're not talking just a few people. We're talking, it is a busy park that early in the morning, and I'm sure it goes like that all day long. That being said, Sunrise Middle, I think, would benefit, that whole neighborhood would definitely benefit with the development of a track field, or what we were discussing, what would be that $750,000 that is being taken away and redistributed, reallocated. And I'm not sure why we want to do that, only because I just feel like that neighborhood really could use that as it's an active area. I see it being happening at Carter Park, and we want to encourage people to exercise and to be able to use these types of facilities.
Absolutely. So let me just clarify a couple points, because what we've looked at really so far is just the budget. So we've looked kind of really mathematically at how we're looking to redistribute. But a big part of this conversation was really understanding what amenities we could build into the park. So as part of this plan with Sunrise Middle School specifically, we're actually bringing in some additional amenities that were not considered in the park bond. In the park bond, we did not include track upgrades. We are proposing as part of this plan to include track upgrades so that residents of the community can use it. Unfortunately, we can't get a high school size track in that space, but we certainly can make amenities to the existing middle school track for walking there. We also received a request to remove the racquetball courts, so looking to do that with this proposal. Also adding entryway landscaping to beautify the area. And the question really is around the upgrades to the field. There are some cost savings to be able to upgrade the fields with more Bermuda grass as opposed to using the artificial turf. And so that cost savings then can be spread elsewhere across in other projects.
The other thing, thank you for that. The other thing is this list shows your proposed budgets. But where is the money being taken, and how much out of each proposed, each park or each school, is it being reduced or being added?
So
like, for example, you've got Thoroughgood, Marshall proposed budget at 400,000. Is that an original budget, or is that a higher budget now than what it used to be, and what that number was?
Thank you. So let me orient you just to these slides. So this first slide, these are proposed new projects. They were not contemplated originally in the Parks Bond. This is the budget that we're looking at for these particular school sites. In visiting them, it became clear that they could really add value to the neighborhood, and they weren't initially considered back in the master plan of 2016, but through our joint use working group, we found these to be really great candidates for a park because they were situated in a park desert and because of how the actual space was configured to really create open access to the community. So this would be, these are new projects we're proposing.
No project. Oh, so these numbers are actual new numbers.
These are actual new numbers. And then this next slide is looking at those parks that we really felt were situated in park deserts that could benefit from some increased investment.
See, I don't have that here, so that's what I was looking for, the increase.
I think there's two, you might be referencing the supplement. The supplement is looking school by school and is outlining more of the project scope.
We don't have that.
I don't
on
think
paper.
I don't think I got one. I didn't.
Oh, you only have the supplement.
Yeah, we don't have that, so that's what I'm looking for. This is exactly what I was looking for.
I probably printed it from home.
Yeah. Both were in the email, I believe, but I can walk through again just to make sure everyone's clear. It's sometimes more fun to look at the supplement because you can really see the land and you can start to really visualize it. I find that one a little bit more interesting.
Well, I
myself.
like this. I like being able to see the park. I'd like to, even more so, I'd also like to know exactly where in the city these schools are located. I mean, I know some of these schools, but I don't know where all of these schools are. So that would also be helpful as well, because it'd be nice, that would be important for us to.
I can show that I have that on, I have a number of variations of this presentation, and I do have one that does have a visual. I can try to pull that up before if that's important for this group to look at. But I do have the commission districts listed in here as well, so you at least get that kind of a high level overview, but I can certainly show you the map as well. But just to continue to orient the board to these slides, since it sounds like others may have the supplement only. This next slide is looking at the increase. So it is showing you the school, the commission district, the proposed increase, and the proposed total budget for these projects. Then the next slide here, this is looking at maintaining these projects. So the scope that we are recommending is consistent with what was included in the original park bond list, which tends to make sense because these are existing parks. We tend to have a good sense of the needs there. This would be the proposed decrease of project scope. So you can see here again, the school, the commission district, the decrease amount, and the total overall budget. Did that help clarify your question?
Yeah, it did.
Okay.
I did. I for some reason, Sunrise Middle, I'm taking issue with that. I have a hard time seeing them lose some of the.
May I chime in, Deborah and Caleb, for a moment? We do have a couple people in regards to this particular issue. As it's no secret, I'm Poinsett Heights Civic Association. We had direct opposition to the move for defunding Sunrise Middle School. This is more of a voting issue down the road for us. I mean, our district had, was promised X, and now we're getting Y. So I'm trying to remain as objective as possible in this. But we do have a couple people in the crowd that would like to say a few things on joint use parks, including our liaison for the Educational Advisory Board and a fellow board member from Poinsett Heights, if that's appropriate at this time.
And if I may just add, I know we're speaking a lot to Sunrise Middle School. I think there's this kind of robust conversation for each site, and it is very difficult, to make these recommendations because you want to do as much as you can for each property. But I will say with Sunrise Middle, we've had really great conversations with Poinsettia Heights, and we've documented the priorities for that community. There's more discussion we can have around that, but we believe that within $1 million, we can certainly deliver on the amenities that are most important to that community, and we can continue to have those discussions to make sure that we're meeting those expectations while also serving the broader needs.
Can I just ask, we physically cannot put a high school field and track on that site, is that right? It's constrained, it can't be done, right?
it doesn't
Yeah,
fit.
because I think it was a great idea, but I'm bummed that it can't happen. So that had to be the majority of the reduction, right? When you did the budget, we thought we could do it, and now that we can't, we don't have a replacement to say, hey, just because we can't build a
Right.
field and a
Right.
track, we're not gonna take the 75. Anyway, I just wanna make sure it physically was why that got removed, because site's not big enough. It wasn't just an arbitrary decision, we couldn't do it, right? Okay, just make sure.
Yeah, let me just add to that point and kind of a broader point. So the reason that we're kind of dealing with these school properties separately is because when the master plan was done initially, AECom went out to our park properties and to every park and looked at what amenities were there, what needed to be done. And so we had a good idea on the number, the parks, and what had to be done. The other phase of the master plan was, here's some other things you should think about with the school parks. They didn't go out there and do an assessment with the school. It's not even our property. So they said, you need to look at Sunrise Middle School. You should look at this park. You should look at this park because they have, from Google Maps, they got a nice piece of property there, and we all knew that. So this was a very high level, here's 5 or 6 parks that we think you guys should look at. Again, this was just a master plan for things to think about. But then the master plan got accepted as the parks bond. So then that's when we started getting into the nitty gritty with these school park properties. So I just want to make sure you understand why the difference is, like why we're not dealing with this whole system again for the parks. The schools at the time were just would be nice to have. Here's what we think it would cost to do it. But it was more, and Joe's here, it was more of a Google map, like, it's probably going to cost you this much to do this here and this there. And we didn't talk to the schools, we didn't talk to the neighborhoods, we didn't talk to anybody, because at that point, it was just a kind of a dream. But now that it's approved, what Zoe and her group and the working group and working with the school districts now is trying to figure out how to spend that money. So I just want to make sure you guys are clear on that.
Go ahead, Marion.
With respect to the new parks that are in the park deserts that you're kind of reallocating some of that money to, how does that help our walkability percentage?
That would probably be a Joe question for or Enrique.
Joe, do you know how the walkability to some of these newer parks and park deserts that would be joint use, is it improving? Again, it might be best to have a.
Yeah, I don't know that we have that tonight. I know we are at, last number was like 87% or so of the population was within the city, but I think no doubt with this it would bump it up quite a bit, because again, the group was really looking at areas that were of need. And again, that's why we did Bennett, because we knew Bennett didn't have anything, and some of the other parks. So I don't have the percentage, but it definitely would increase that number, Mariana.
Great, thank you.
I can share too, just anecdotally and having lots of conversations with principals and the school community. A lot of these kids are jumping the fence because they don't have anywhere to go to play, and they're substandard, most of them, play areas. So when we go to the schools and we hear these stories, I mean, the principals are so enthusiastic about this project because they know that their kids will benefit after school hours, and it's a great thing that the city's doing. I know there's still some conversation around each project and making sure that everything's allocated appropriately, and we definitely need to do that due diligence. But overall, I mean, just a really exciting project and a wonderful thing that the city is doing to create a benefit for kids during the school day and the community after hours. And Dr. Zeman, did you want to comment? I saw your hand up.
Thank you all for it, and thank you for the question, in particular about Sunrise Middle School. The EAB is going to be meeting on the 16th of December. I'd encourage any member, I'm the liaison to your board, by the way, from the EAB and the chair as well. We created the principles that launched off that city and school board working group. We pay a lot of attention to the 20,000 students and to the community need. There are things that we're still going to debate at our meeting on the 16th. Our plan is to get through that debate and to make a recommendation to you. I'd encourage anybody that cares passionately about any one of the adds or takes or maintenances of the budget to come to our meeting on the 16th and help us think through those problems. The Sunrise Middle School issue is a particularly vexing one. That school is students that attend there right now are from all over the city. 73% of them are persons of color. We wanted the plan to be reflective of improving equity in what's delivered across our city. And needs analysis is just really, really difficult to do. That's the one part of the plan that the EAB will probably spend more time on to make sure that there isn't another way to add up the dollars and come back to you with a plan that is wonderful. The biggest fact of all this I want you all to remember, though, is that joint use parks are an incredibly efficient way to improve the parks that we need in the city, whether it's walkability, utility. You talked about Carter Park. These schools are all neighborhood schools. They are put there because there are people there that want to go to an elementary, middle, or high school, and they're in the right places, and there's a lot of great land there. Sunrise is a wonderful opportunity, just like North Fork is with their waterfront property. And we just have to kind of go through this debate, if you don't mind. I ask for your forbearance just for a couple weeks while we go through that. But I'd love for anybody that's really interested in the ads and the takeaways to come to the meeting. There's still plenty of time for community input. There's been a lot of political interest in Sunrise in particular. It's the one part of the plan that people look at and it doesn't always square up in their minds. I'm not speaking personally, but in other people's minds, it doesn't square, the logic doesn't square for reducing that so much. There is the opportunity to do a field there. That's what's in the master plan. You could put a synthetic field there. It'd be a nice sized synthetic field. It would help create a signature park. It is a school that, it is a potential park that both an elementary school and a middle school could use, so it kind of gets double points because it's right there next to Bennett and Sunrise. So if you don't mind, we're going to really hash this out for probably most of the meeting on the 16th and try and do what's really, really hard, which is to keep about 7 competing themes in our mind at the same time. And there's been a number of discussions during EAB meetings about coming back to you with some creative options where we might be able to do both. We might be able to do all the things that the working group said to do and still do the full plan, the full budget of the plan, not the scope, but the budget. And we'll come back with some ideas for you and hopefully numbered recommendations so that you consider it. But I really think that we'd be doing the city a great favor if anybody from this committee that cares passionately about it would just come to the meeting at 6:30 on the 16th. Same bat channel, same bat time. You'll be right here in this room live, hashing it out. And again, this is difficult work. One of the things that you all need to know is that the amount of work that went into this for 18 plus months is heroic. It's I spend a lot of my time dealing with education issues and with the school board, and it's not easy always to coordinate with them. In fact, it's one of the most difficult government organizations that I've ever run into to work with. And the team that got together and worked on it really did an amazing job to get us to this point. But I think we'll come back to you guys with a justification and probably 2 or 3 recommendations prioritized for you guys to consider based on, our role as the education advisors. Because these joint use parks are really about the schools and about the students and about the residents. So I think our board is in a good position to put all of these things together and come back to you. But what I'm really hoping that the board comes up with is a way that we could do the right thing by Sunrise and still do all the other ads and fact of life changes there are. Who wants to build a bathroom where we don't need one anymore? Who wants to build a park where the principal in Broward County Schools says, hey, we don't want one there? That's easy. But the other ads and takes that aren't just matter of fact changes, that takes a lot of thinking, and the board's been working really hard on that for 19 months with Zoe and the rest of the team. So if you don't mind, we'll do that, and we'll come back. I'll carry that recommendation back to y'all at your January meeting, and I'll be prepared to discuss for anyone as it's not at the EAB meeting, how we got to the recommendations that we made.
Alan, y'all be there.
Would you please?
Yeah, I'm
Oh,
coming.
thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you for,
I'll save you a parking spot.
thank you.
Yeah.
On that note, I also want to mention that we had a liaison for the EAB with Martha Steinkamp. Who
Yeah, no, I'm the liaison now.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so
I
I'm
couldn't
gonna-
remember. I don't think I was there for that vote. So.
Yeah, so I am the liaison.
Okay.
For parks, for,
And we're in good hands. Thank you.
Excellent.
thanks.
Yeah, just, I had one quick question though, and I'm not sure who to ask this. Dr. Zeman made a point, and it's something that just clicked in my head as consideration. I keep seeing, in one of these presentations I get sent was a 400-meter track, and it keeps saying does not fit each way it was put there. But in the original bond scope, it just says that for Sunrise Middle School, synthetic turf. It doesn't say anything about a full-size track. It doesn't say an 800-meter or 400-meter track. Currently there, I see that there is a track and a field inside of the track. So I'm curious where the mindset of it has to be this massive track and massive field versus what was just mentioned was a fair sized field for a elementary school, middle school environment. Maybe where we're going with this, or where did this misconception come from that we're potentially throwing the baby out with the bathwater?
So I guess some of the history is, as I mentioned, Caleb, is that, and Zoe mentioned earlier, so at the time that master plan was done, we didn't have Mills Pond and we didn't have Holiday Park synthetic turf. And we had a very high need for mainly our travel soccer teams on places that we could put these kids because they were just, it wasn't working. So that was kind of put into the master plan, again, at a very high level, that Sunrise has some property. You got to look at maybe putting a synthetic field over there, and they can practice over there, and maybe the smaller kids can play games over there. So that's kind of where that thought came from. So I don't know if there was ever a thought from anyone, even now, that it has to be a full-size track with a full-size field. I think that was something that maybe was just, maybe they saw it on a piece of paper and thought that's what that meant, but it sure wasn't our intention to do that. The track was the track that's there now, and was to, and then the synthetic turf was just to mainly the open space area to the east of the track, and was to make that into synthetic turf so it would be a lot more playable for the soccer. So that, again, and then through the years that, in our idea, that need has kind of changed on what the need is. But, I think I think we got to get somewhere soon. I mean, as just mentioned, we've got to come to terms on this. So hopefully there's a happy compromise in the middle, because if we can't give and take and we want to go back to the original plan, then there are going to be parks that Zoe identified that aren't going to get anything. And at this point, there's no additional funding. You already mentioned the 14 million. Well, we've already overspent that 14 million. I can guarantee you that right now. So there's no money out there that I'm aware of. Hopefully we can find some and we can do everything. But at this point, in order for us to be able to move forward on on the new recommendations, we're going to have to try to find money somewhere else, and that's where this recommendation came from.
Is there any reason why we can't wait until Dr. Z comes back to us in in January?
No, there's no reason at all. And again, I definitely don't want to rush it, because I know the neighborhood needs
That's
to be
what I'm
involved. And, once we can kind of figure out what we think we can do with the amount of money that we have, or maybe we can find some more money somewhere, I'd be glad to talk forward as long as we need to hopefully get to where we need to be. I just,
I'd like to hear what
yeah.
the
Yeah,
EAB, what their recommendation is before we go ahead and
Yeah, we're not here tonight for any kind of approval. This
Okay,
was just to
okay.
kind of have this discussion, let you know where we're at. They've been working hard, Dr. Zima's been working very hard on it with his group, and it's kind of taken under his wing with many other things to try to get this thing done. So I'm just sharing that it's good to have discussions, and I think in this case we need to have probably more discussions, but it is going to slow the process down some, but maybe that's not a bad thing, but because we want the final product to be what it should be and not just,
Right.
just do it because that's, we need to get it done.
Thanks, Phil.
Understood. There was one other gentleman out here that's been raising his hand an awful lot, and please.
There we go. Now you can hear me. Okay. I grew up with a single parent family, And I spent my time after school at Parkway Middle or Parkway Junior High at that time because we didn't have middle schools, and at Stranahan High School. So I believe that we're doing the right thing. We just got to figure out the right money for the right place.
Okay, all right. Hello, everyone. I'm James Labrie. I am a resident of Poinsettia Heights, excuse me, and I also serve on the Poinsettia Heights Civic Association board. I always love it coming to these meetings. I learn so much when I come here. It's great to hear people speak. I want to just make a few comments, and I might have a few questions before I'm done commenting. But first of all, Phil, you've really explained a lot. Last meeting, you explained a lot. Tonight, I've heard a lot from you, too. What's troubling to me, though, is when I hear people say, well, we put this together and this became part of the bond. Well, that's what we voted on. I voted on $1.7 million going to Sunrise Middle School. To find out later that, oh, well, maybe we need to tweak it a bit and take some away, that to me is really unacceptable. So for me, I have a real problem from the get-go here with this. When I look at the numbers, and I looked at by district, Zoe, District 1, net zero. District 4 comes out $425,000 ahead. District 3, $300,000 ahead. District 2, minus 725. It's all coming out of Sunrise Middle. So I'm sure when you talk about community equity, I have a problem with that because I don't see that when I look at these numbers. Another issue I might have is with the proposed new projects. As an example, Harbordale Elementary, $275,000. Increased community demand for park space. That's what your presentation said in August. How much money is going to Harbordale Park in this big bond issue? Do we know? It's in that list. 3 million? Sorry? Harbordale Park. For the school? That's the park in Harbordale.
This would be a new park at Harbordale Elementary School. There is a park called Harbordale Park.
Okay, and that's getting $355,000.
On the other side of 17th Street, though, right?
Yeah, so that would be that again would be an example of a large walkable design.
So right now, Harbordale, on the north side of 17th Street, doesn't have a park at all, right?
It's got $275,000.
Okay.
We got $275 for Harbordale School.
And how much for Harbordale Park?
$350 for Harbordale Park.
$350. Okay.
Those are different neighborhoods.
But they are, yeah, across 17th Street.
Okay. Okay.
Not necessarily walk.
Especially not for young
Walkability.
Okay. William Dandy Middle School, you're taking $675,000 away from them. And the reasoning was that, is according to your slide deck, low need with access to diversity of amenities at Oswald Park. Oswald Park is getting $3 million. So it's okay to take $675 away from a school that's right next to that. But $725 from Sunrise, there's nothing next to Sunrise. When we talk about park deserts, Poinsettia Heights has no park, except, oh, they've got the Bennett School playground now. Well, that wasn't part of the bond issue, was it? That wasn't part of this joint use program, was it? So here we go. You've created this tiny little park at this elementary school, and now we're supposed to say, oh, Poinsettia Heights has a park? That's unacceptable. Don't use that as an excuse for not giving the full amount of money to Sunrise Middle. I'm a resident. I've been in this city for 19 years. I voted for this bond issue, as did my neighbors. We deserve to get the full amount of money. We can find ways to spend it. Maybe we won't put in a full-size track field. Maybe it doesn't fit. Maybe the turf doesn't make sense. Give me the money. I'll work with the PTA. I'll work with the school board. I'll work with the principals. I'll work with the neighborhood association. We can find ways to spend the $1.7 million that we voted for. Thank you.
Thank you.
First, I want to really applaud Poinsettia Heights community. They have been very engaged. It's wonderful to see the community coming around in such support of the neighborhood and making these improvements. And so, as staff, as I mentioned, some of the challenge is seeing how we can look citywide at bringing those same amenities all across the city where neighborhoods may not be as engaged. Which is part of the reason we did a scoring methodology to try to be objective in how we make those recommendations. And as we look at the plan, we really weren't looking at it as taking away. We first started with which school sites are viable. What type of improvements would make the most sense on these sites based on input from the principal and from the school community? And then within the budget that we had, really worked from there to itemize the cost for each site. So it certainly was not an approach of how can we take away from these sites. That's kind of, we're looking at it now just because we're looking at the overall budget. But the process really started with which are viable, what are the amenities that are most needed, what can we make, what improvements could we make within the budget we have. So that was the mindset going into this, is how we can do the most good with the dollars that were allocated. And we certainly are really looking at what amenities we can bring in. So we've talked a lot about Sunrise Middle School. There's a lot of different scenarios that we've been working through based on the input that we received from the community. So Alex would love to have a follow-up with you on that, and looking at different scenarios of how you can improve the track and also bring in, field upgrades and what that could look like. So that's certainly a conversation that would be important to continue to have with that neighborhood. But on a broad scale, we are working within the limited parameters of the budget. And we're trying to, in partnership with the school board, determine how we can do the most good. And no conversation was it, how can we take away? But more, what's really the need and what's going to be the biggest benefit based on the resources that we do have. So if there are any other specific questions around those conversations and that kind of input that went in project by project, because we've had a lot of these conversations for all of the 15 sites that we're looking at, and you get, I will tell you personally, connected to every project. You just want to do as much as you can for each project. And, I think certainly there's some revisions we can continue to work through, but I believe we'll get to something that's really going to have a great benefit citywide. Go ahead, Carrie.
This is the second time we've had this topic, and the second time we've talked exclusively about Sunrise. I have a question about something totally not Sunrise related. For Croissant Park, how much of that $2.4 million is to replace the water playground?
Do you have the itemized Enrique in front of you? He's gonna pull it up.
Yeah.
Another reduction was for the bathroom inlet.
So it looks like at Croissant for the water playground and some pool renovations, it was $1 million.
So, I guess
That's, again, an estimated number. Because we don't really know, but that's what.
$1 million.
That's what we're guessing, yes.
So I guess I want to state my concern and then kind of ask maybe what the process is in that regard. So my concern with it is I think that water playground is fantastic, but it's open 3 hours a week during maybe 8 months out of the year. And so I don't know how much the pool is certainly open longer periods of time than that. So I don't know how much of that $1 million is for pool upgrades, which I think the pool gets a lot of use and is very important for teaching kids to swim and all those things. And I love the water playground, but I'm concerned about, so let's say the water playground is $750,000 out of that million. I don't know if that's true, but let's say it is. I would be concerned about spending $750,000 to replace a water playground that is almost just completely unavailable. I mean, I've lived in this city for 10 years now. I have 3 kids. We almost never go to it because the hours, I mean, it's open 1 to 4 from like April to like October. It's almost unavailable. And I understand the challenges of having lifeguards, and when you have standing water, you have to have lifeguards. So I guess I want to know kind of who's the person, who is it the school, is it the neighborhood? Who's saying let's spend $750,000 to keep open this thing that is basically unavailable, and were other alternatives looked at, like, you know, in Holiday Park, we're doing a splash pad. The current conceptual plan for the splash pad is way too small. We're gonna have to make it much bigger. But, you know, we're doing a splash pad, and I think in Lockhart Park, they're doing a splash pad too, specifically because they don't require a lifeguard. So they can be open, you know, 24/7 or during daylight hours. And my understanding is with the water playground, the challenge is you have to have a lifeguard, maybe 2, and that's why they're open for a small period of time. So I guess my question is, who's saying, yeah, let's spend $750,000 for something that's open 3 hours a week for 8 months, and were alternatives to still provide, you know, a water experience, a water play experience that don't require a lifeguard and could be open for extended hours considered?
Yes.
The short answer.
So,
How about Carrie? Thank you so much for a non-sunrise sunrise middle question. Yes.
So, all very good points, and so the idea is the new water playgrounds are old school. I mean, they don't put those in anymore. So what we have out there now at Croissant and at Lauderdale Manors and at Riverland and all those are going to go away, and they're all going to be what they now call spray grounds, which is 0 depth.
You let me go on for that whole time.
Take a breath. So I don't want to. So
you were just waiting to say yes.
So, but no, all very good points. I was actually, and I sent Joe. Joe had to take off, but I sent Joe a picture and Enrique a picture. This.
So he didn't hear my comment about the Holiday Park splash pad? Someone can pass it on to him.
No, we're totally aware. But I was in Key West over the weekend, over Thanksgiving. They just put a brand new, I don't know what the term is, but I think they call them spray grounds now. But anyway, brand new, and it was packed full of kids. And to your point, it's there's no water. It's, you know, there's no standing water. There's no lifeguards needed, and it's much better chlorine wise and everything wise, and it's open all the time. So that's the plan. That's what we're going to do with all of them, and that's what AECOM will be doing. And so that's why the number is to actually demolish, or I guess for lack of a better, we get rid of the old. You know, we'll still be able to use some of the plumbing and things like that, but as far as the surfacing and the play experience yourself, it will be a 0 depth, no lifeguards needed, open all the time type experience.
That is fantastic.
Thank you very much. And when we build them, we'll tell them that was Carrie's idea.
Just one thing for like our board for a comment. I know, Deborah, you said you're the liaison. I can't make it on the 16th to the Education Advisory Board. But one thing that I think would be a good idea to maybe have as part of that conversation is we're obviously weighing the needs of the students at the school and also the needs of the neighborhood around the school, right? To have that walkability standard to get people who want 100%. So I don't know if it would help to know what percentage of students at every school live within 10 minutes of that school versus if they're in other neighborhoods, so that maybe they're not staying right there after school, but they're going back to a school in their neighborhood or something like that. Like that might help the analysis.
Good point, and I think Zoe probably has that information. Sunrise is a magnet school. They pull kids from all over the place. Yeah.
So I wonder if some of their kids then, maybe they aren't staying there at the park after school, but they're going to back home and then going to a park in their neighborhood.
Those conversations also with school board members who recognize that the school may be located in their district, but serve kids that are in other districts. And, you know, as we've been talking about Sunrise Middle School, Thorogood, Marshall, would be an example of that, where many kids are coming from that neighborhood. So this would expand access near their home and at their school. So we can look more at that in relation to other sites as well.
Thank you.
I just had one final comment, and thank you for your time and allowing me to speak a second time. This document that says signature projects, and it's got all these dollars assigned to different projects. I did a quick subtotaling at the end here, and the dog parks are 2 million, joint use is around 11 or so. Purchasing open space 30, future 14 million. So those total 57 million. So out of the 200, that leaves $143 million. Not one dime is coming to my neighborhood of $143 million. Thank you.
Zoe, again, I wanted to say thank you. It's nice to see that the original plan was only 11 parks. It looks like it's been expanded to create a broader footprint, and that's a good thing. I really look forward to hearing back from the EAB, their recommendations and any input they put. But I appreciate you giving us an update on this, giving us a kind of a fill-in on a lot of these things, and obviously it's created some hot discussions in some areas specifically, but thank you again for your time. Did anybody else from the board have anything specifically for Zoe?
I just want to know why we can't move forward with the ones that aren't in contention, right? So it sounds like Sunrise Middle, and then the money for the schools that Sunrise Middle is going to are the ones in contention. But I mean, just for example, 2 years ago, VSY raised like $30,000 from their own students to supplement this bond money to build this sunshade. Those students, they've graduated, they're gone. You know, I mean, why can't we just move forward on the ones that are ready to go and there's no issue? I mean, you know, a lot of these schools, they're getting, you know, 300,000, 200,000, but they're happy with it. That's a lot, you know, not getting $1 million, not getting 2 million, but like, hey, we're happy with it. We want to go forward. Why do we have to wait on the entire package? You know, it sounds like there's still a lot of negotiating to be going between Sunrise and when the other schools get word that like they were going to have a park, but now they're not going to have a park, they're going to be here too, right? Like apparently no one's told them yet, but someone's going to tell them like, hey, you were in line to get like a $400,000 park, now you're not going to get it. Like they're going to show up too, and it's just going to be gridlock. Why can't we move forward on the ones that are ready to go and don't have any dispute?
I think a lot of that has to do with the bond manager who kind of oversees that community input process and is not here now. But
Well, and I think that's a good point, Karen. I think we can look at that probably. I mean, I would like to bring back a recommendation to the board, hopefully at the next meeting in January, depending on how the EAB goes and, you know, some discussion with the neighborhood. But to be honest with you, just like you said, I mean, you know, there's really a lot of options on how we can get this done and how we can spend this money. And I can appreciate that, you know, it was in there for 1.75. So I want, or 100, you know, I want that. That's what I voted on, and that's what I want. So I can appreciate that as well. So, you know, if we either try to compromise, come up with a good plan, or we go back to the old plan, and unfortunately some schools don't get improvements at this time, and we try to get those improvements later. But I guess I would hope that maybe we can flush this out in the next month, come up with a plan and do it all, because I just don't want to move forward on some schools assuming that some of the other ones are going to give and take, and you didn't even, you know, we didn't have any discussion about mine. So I would rather do it as a group effort, and for all the schools. We've been working with all the schools and the school districts and the principals, and they put a lot of trust in us that we were going to do this and go through the process and get everybody together and talk through this. So I'd like to do that and not just start moving forward on some schools and then other schools get, in theory, left behind or don't get anything at all until we have made that decision as a whole and as a board and as a commission. Again, as a reminder, these all go to the commission as a public hearing. So, you know, the commission will weigh in, and they may have totally different idea on what they would like to see done as well.
Do we blow the chance to do this in the summer of 2022? That's when, I mean, work at schools probably needs to be done in the summer when the kids aren't there. Because this presentation was supposed to happen in September, right? And then this whole Sunrise thing pushed it back. And then you came in front of us and the Sunrise thing, and now it's still the Sunrise, we can't vote because Sunrise. And so at what point are the rest of the schools not going to get this work done during the summer and then maybe have to push until a following summer over this? Like what's like that cutoff?
I don't know what the cutoff is, but Carrie, but I think, as I mentioned before, I really don't want to rush things and I don't want to push things until we agree on what needs to be done. And I think we can do some work during the school year. We did some at Bennett. I know when school is in session, so I think we can work around and get some stuff done as well. But we can't do it all in the summertime. But it's a good point. But I think we can buy a little more time. Dr. Zeman's already stated that he's working on this hard, and hopefully we can come up with something that everybody can be somewhat happy with, and then we can move forward with everything. Because I would guess that what we'll do is give all these projects to AECOM as a package deal as well, just like they did with the Phase 2, because it would be much easier to have one contractor and one engineer and architect working with the school board and their interesting permitting process and everything else that they do, which is a little bit different than ours, than having a bunch of different people doing that as well. So I think if we can group them all together and give them the work, then they can run with it as well. So if we can hopefully have something to bring back for you in January, that would be my hope.
Thank you, Phil.
At the risk of upsetting anyone going on about Sunrise, I just wanted to clarify a few things that the community in that area has been advocating for. And first and foremost, as a member of this board, I don't want to see any other schools not get funding, but there is, some responsibility from what originally came down from the vote and then how to move that money around. One of the clarifications I wanted to make was that our community was very grateful to see a park at Bennett. We got a brand new basketball court, and then there's a small kiddie playground that serves that area, but it's not really an extensive park as what we're looking to see at Sunrise. Also, Caleb, you had some questions about how the track and the field is there right now. They actually don't play on the field that's inside of the track. They have to play their scrimmages and games somewhere in between the baseball diamond and the track. And when they're, there's been a lot of discussions with Sunrise Middle, the principal there, as we are, as a civic association was advocating to make sure that their school and their kids get what they need as a priority. One of the things that Carrie mentioned was, why do we keep talking about Sunrise? And I just want to remind everybody that Sunrise is just one of the very few middle schools that pull, not only from Fort Lauderdale, but from all over. You can look down the list and you won't find another middle school on there probably. It's all elementary schools and other schools. So, Sunrise is definitely a hot topic. I don't like to see it hold up the process, as I, exclaimed earlier, that I would like to, expedite things. But unfortunately, there is, some things that warrant further discussion. And, at the risk of slowing down the process, I think this is going to be something that needs a little bit more involved decisions and well-informed decisions. So that being said, I'll turn over the mic back to you, Caleb.
No problem. I think we've addressed this, and I think the consensus is to defer till after we hear from the Education Advisory Board before moving forward anymore. So without any further input, we'll move towards board comments, if there are any.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Zoe.
Let me, if you don't mind, Caleb, while I'm up here, I just want to share with the board, and I don't know that I brought this up. At my age, I never remember what I've said and not said. So, but we did get reaccredited for our department in October. I don't know if I mentioned that to the board or not, that we were going through that process. But we are an accredited agency We were accredited 10 years ago, and we were I think the 101st in the country to be accredited, which is a huge accomplishment. It's a lot of work throughout the year, and it's a lot of work to be accredited. And we have our peers come in and review us and do all that kind of stuff. Well, and we just went through our second 5-year reaccreditation, which we just passed. And again, it was a big deal. And now there's 183, I believe. So in 10 years, there was only another 80 agencies nationwide that were accredited. So that's 80 a year. So it's a huge accomplishment. It was 10 years ago, and it still is today for our staff and for the city to be an accredited agency. So we made a little video for that and some other stuff, but I know there was this board, I felt like this meeting might be a while, so I didn't want to bring that all up today, but maybe at the next meeting we can show you the video that we put together for that, and we haven't had the award that they gave us. I can bring that as well. But I just wanted to kind of, throw kudos to the staff that works hard every day, but worked very hard.
Congratulations, Phil.
Absolutely.
It was a great accomplishment.
That's good news.
Were you recognized in Nashville, or will that come up this following year?
It was in Nashville. We were recognized virtually. So
okay.
yeah. So
Is that video, Leona, did you send us the link for that?
you may have already seen it, or you've seen the link. We did post it on social media, but
I don't recall seeing it, but
I don't recall, but I can share it.
yeah,
Please.
that'd be cool. That'd be nice.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Phil.
Thank you.
All right.
Going back to board comments, are there any comments? New business, communications commission. I know there was discussion of that earlier, but I think that was kind of rattled through by AECom. Any other communication to commission that we're missing? Without so hearing, I move for my last item on the agenda of adjournment. Any second?
I'll second it. Happy holidays, everybody.
Happy holidays.